I am the lead librarian, and I'm standing in for Matt Clark, the director. I'm Nan Sonater, and I can't tell you how happy we are to have you guys here, and in particular to have fellows from the Fine Arts Work Center in concert with the Writer's Voice. I think that that's just a wonderful, even historic thing, and so we're really excited and just happy to have folks celebrating artistic writing of all sorts tonight. Also, happy International Women's Day. I can't tell you how sorry I am that I'm not wearing red. I was dressing in the dark this morning, so I didn't really know what I was putting on. But anyway, but I do. I support International Women's Day. Really happy to celebrate it here with you all, and I hope you all have a really great time tonight.
Thank you.
Woohoo, thanks, Nan. Thank you so much, Nan. And you do have some red on that shirt.
Yes.
It's there. It's there. Happy International Women's Day. This is wonderful. I'm Diane Hamilton, and welcome to our monthly Writer's Voice Cafe. Thank you all so much for coming. We are celebrating our 10th year. This is the year of our number 10. And we have delicious snacks and coffee and tea over here, so anytime during the evening, quietly, and then you can come back. I want to talk about Provincetown's World Storytelling Day 2017. It should be on your seat somewhere. It isn't, you can grab one. And it's Monday, March 20th. By the way, this is a global storytelling day, and it's been celebrated since the beginning of the early 2000s. So this is celebrated around the world, and we're going to be the first. This is our first year to celebrate it. So there's different things happening. Growing Up in Provincetown is one session. That's 10:45 to noon. Lunch buffet is noon to 1. And then we come back for I Came to Provincetown Because. I stayed in Provincetown because. And then the last session is sort of open to all kinds of stories, joys, tribulations, transformations, and finding your passion in Provincetown. We thought we'd concentrate on Provincetown. And the theme for World Storytelling Day is transformation. So I did get it in there. So there I am, it did. So it's free, please come. You can come for any session, and we'd be happy to hear your story. You can read your story. You can do puppets with your story, you can act out your story, dance your story, whatever you would like to do, we're open for it. And this is our first year. All right, so cell phones off, please. Well, it's so interesting to hear. We never know who's going to show up, and there's some new people here reading their work, and that's also very different, so thank you so much. Before we start our Writing Fellows, Fine Arts Work Center Writing Fellows, if anyone wants to you can get tea or coffee or whatever anytime. And it is decaf coffee. Okay, so we're going to start with Michael. Michael Deagler. Okay. He's going to read fiction, and his fiction has appeared in Glimmer Train, Kenyon Review, Online, New England Review, Electric Literature's Recommended Reading, wow, and elsewhere. He is a 2016-2017 fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. Before you come up, I'm sorry, Sophie Starmack wrote a little bit for me before you all come up. Is it okay if I read this? Yeah. The Fine Arts Work Center was founded in 1968 to provide a supportive, creative environment for writers and artists in the historical artist colony of Provincetown. Since its inception, nearly 1,000, and the 4 here are part of that, okay, fellowships have been awarded to visual artists and writers in the crucial early stages of their careers. Arriving in October, and staying in residence through May, the fellows are given complete intellectual freedom to pursue their work in a community of exceptional peers. That's great. Each fellow is provided with an apartment and a modest stipend. Throughout the fellowship season, each fellow gives a reading or exhibition exhibition to which the community is inviting, this is extra. Fellows have won every major national award in writing, including 7 Pulitzer Prizes and 2 National Book Awards. And so without further ado, we're going to start with Michael Deagler. Please come up. This is the first time we've had writing fellows from the Fine Oaks Work Center.
Hi, thanks. I'm not one of the Pulitzer Prize winners.
Not yet.
But not yet.
Thanks for having me. This is really fun. I'm gonna read the first 5 pages of a short story I wrote last year called Southwark. It began in an almost romantic way, or in a way that a certain type of person might construe as romantic, the type predisposed to see the world in romantic terms, which isn't me. I met Maureen Mueller by accident along Washington Avenue in the early afternoon of a muggy day right in the June of it all, when she was half flushed from the heat, which meant that I was half smitten, if only in the basest sense. Heat expands our hearts, I think. She was wearing skinny jeans and a billowy shirt, and she was carrying a floor scraper. The whole thing was over inside of a month, so check your expectations. It wasn't the first time I'd met her. I'd known her in college, though I hadn't seen her since. That day, on Washington Avenue, beneath the lone surviving tower of the Southwark Plaza housing project, we were 26 and in a different period of our lives. I'd recently emerged from the maw of alcoholism and was learning how to walk once again in the clear-headed light of day, still enamored of every breeze that moved my hair and reminded me that I was alive and that my sins were more or less forgiven. Maureen was coming from whatever adventures had befallen her in the last half-decade, probably something involving a guy or a job with lack of either, or a convoluted family incident, or maybe a trip somewhere that had gone painfully awry. Life is my point. Life won't allow us to linger in one place for long. I was happy to run into her. I would have been happy to run into anyone from college, not because I had a job or a wife or even a permanent residence. I did not. But because I was sober again, and I had been a drunk long enough that being sober again was sufficient to make me feel like a success. Maureen, too, looked successful. She stood there on the sidewalk with the easy confidence of someone holding a purchase from a hardware store. Her very bearing suggested credentials. After we embraced, I could do nothing but rest my hands on my waist and hope that my bearing, too, suggested something. "Are you tearing up a carpet?" I asked her. "Yes," said Maureen, with an eagerness that caught me by surprise, as though the floor scraper was merely a signal to the universe that she was in dire need of intervention. "Do you know anything about that? I'm a total carpet virgin and I have no idea what I'm doing. I read that I need one of these." "It's a pretty simple task," I said. This was an assumption. I'd never torn up a carpet. I'd only recognized the scraper because I'd lately stayed with a friend of mine named Ivan, who kept such an instrument in his foyer, for protection from home invaders, I think, as much as anything else. Can you help me?" asked Maureen. "If you have the time, I mean. I'm sorry, Dennis, you're probably busy. But if you could just get me started, I would pay you. But that's like so presumptuous of me. I'm sure you have somewhere you need to get to." She'd offered me an out, and I should probably have accepted it, since I was lying, and since pressing on would almost certainly reveal as much. But I could have used some cash, and I didn't have anywhere to get to. And, in truth, I thought I could tear up a carpet easily enough, and wanted to see if that thought wasn't so far-fetched. Maureen's enthusiasm had something to do with it. It made me believe in myself, as misguided as that was. "No need to pay me," I said, "because you have to say that." Maureen lived a few blocks south in Pennsport in a house that she had recently bought at a good price for the neighborhood, which was quickly becoming another charm in Philadelphia's hipster bracelet. The new gentry strode the blocks like consignment shop conquistadors in their coifs and sunglasses and lip rings and V-necks. I knew them well. I had grown up among them in the suburbs, back when we were all too young for affectations. I had attended college with them and witnessed their bohemian rebirth. The men, in particular, I found absurd to the point of farce. They were the sons of lawyers and pediatricians who now wanted to look nothing so much like the sons of farmers, or, better yet, the sons of no father at all. the sort of durable men who had sprung fully formed from the earth itself, who had walked out of the woods with an undercut and a 5 o'clock shadow, smelling of pine and smoke in the vernal soil. I despised them and was envious of them, since presenting such a curated persona to the world was surely better than proffering my own sheepish, flawed, semi-authentic one. Fun neighborhood, I said as we walked. It's cool, right? Said Maureen. She lived on a short, elbow-shaped alley that existed only for half a block off 3rd. Her place was modest from the street, a 2-story row house of red brick with unadorned white lintels above the windows and door. The interior was in a state of transition, though perhaps by design. One wall was exposed brick, another half-painted from white to blue or blue to white. The rooms were crowded with boxes and errant objects that hadn't yet found permanent homes. The shelves and cabinetry were spare as scaffolding and looked as though they had only just been hung a moment before our arrival. It's small, said Maureen contritely. I probably shouldn't have bought it really, but I figure it's an investment. Maureen worked for a pharmaceutical company in Center City. Her position involved business-to-business transactions, her explanation of which I hadn't fully comprehended. It's great, I said, and meant it. There was really nothing I wanted more than a little house to live in and figure things out, and the fact that Maureen had pulled the trigger on one filled me with esteem. I was still grappling with my image of Maureen from school, where she never struck me as someone capable of financial responsibility, or domestic commitment, or serious employment, although no one else had either, really. I'd never expected anyone to grow up. The floors down here came carpet-free, she said, tapping the wood boards beneath our feet with the handle of the scraper. It's upstairs I need to fix. There's this really awful green shag up there. I followed her to the 2nd story to observe the offending material. It looked like sheet moss, coating every floor but the bathrooms and threatening to ascend the walls. I'm a little afraid of what I'll find under there, she said. Skeletons, I suggested. Just as long as it's not laminate, said Maureen. We walked into the back bedroom, which was empty of furniture. Maureen had already acquired the rest of the tools for the job: pliers, a utility knife, a compact crowbar. I picked up the crowbar and felt the weight of it in my hand. Simply holding it gave me an unearned sense of efficacy. I crouched down to investigate the fissure where the carpet met the wall, cognizant of Maureen's eyes on my movements. I think you start in the corner, don't you? She asked. Yep, that sounded right. I shifted a few feet toward the back of the room, where a delta of green shag met the right angle of the wall. I fit the claw of the crowbar between the carpet and the baseboard. It caught on something and I yanked. The carpet leapt upward with unanticipated ease, heaving an exhalation of dust that powdered my eyes and nostrils. I allowed myself one deep, masculine cough and yanked again. Once I had a wall's length of carpet detached, I folded it over and looked down at the exposed tack strip and padding beneath it. I peeled back the padding as well to find the postulated wood. Maureen crept up to take a look. Oak, she cooed, and I believed her. Just like downstairs, it's beautiful. I rapped my knuckles on the wood and nodded appreciatively. It feels like oak, I agreed. I sliced off the free section of carpet and padding with the utility knife to give myself more room to work. After half an hour of yanking and slicing, I'd made it to the door, which would have to be removed from its hinges. Maureen said that was enough for one day. She ordered us dinner while I washed up in the bathroom, discreetly hacking carpet particles into her sink. As we sat in her crowded kitchen eating pad thai and drinking seltzer water from Maureen's soda maker, we agreed I'd come back the next day to finish the job while she was at work, if it wasn't too much trouble, and only if I had the time. I've got the time, I said, because I did. Maureen gave me a smile as inviting as rice noodles and tamarind pulp. I'll leave a key in the mailbox. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michael Deagler. Thank you so much. Leila Chatti. Is it? Oh, okay. You got it right away. Thanks, Neil. Is a Tunisian-American poet, the recipient of a scholarship from the Tin House Writers Workshop and prizes from Plowshare's Emerging Writers Contest, Narrative Magazine's 30 Below Contest, and 8th Annual Poetry Contest, and the Academy of American Poets. Her poems appear in Best New Poets, Plowshares, Tin House, Narrative, the Georgia Review, the Missouri Review, the Rumpus, and elsewhere. She lives in Provincetown, Massachusetts, where she is a writing fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center. Leila Chatti, please.
So, I was trying to figure out to read, because I have another reading this weekend, so I was trying to pick different things. And it's International Women's Day, so I wanted to read poems that were celebrating women, in particular my mother and my aunt, Peggy Soda Chatti, my mother, and Patricia Soders, my aunt. Beginning. Turning in your cavern like a pint-sized spelunker, I learned to swim. From him I came, his milky tadpole, and in you I waited to receive myself, a patient bead. I like to remember how I was made deliberately, how there was a time when I was at once two separate living things, and also not a whole life, a nothing. Before it was mine, my body was your body, an appendage, a polyp. When did I form my spine knobbed like a taut string of pearls, your namesake? When did my heart unfurl the tendrils of my veins and carry through them first my lifeblood? When did I become a self? Some days there is a phantom pain. I read these poems with your mouth. Creation myth. There was a hole. I filled it. Like a fist in a maw, like blood in a wound. I swelled unbidden as a storm. I ripened, a clot on a stem, a mulberry, stewed in my mother's fine claret, rocked by the moon's sharp pull. I was given darkness to soothe me, named for it. When at last the ache came, it brought me. How I tell it. Laughter was all we were sick with, and no one ever died. God called regular through the telephone and sent us postcards and legible ink. He liked us best. He told us so, and we believed him. Some days I'd go swimming in the sky, and I never forgot my towel, and my feet kicked up storms just for fun. God danced with my mother. He never stomped on her toes, but wasn't so good he made her look bad, and she liked that. When he came for dinner, he always brought the right wine and left when we wanted. He was proud of my poems. He told me I would surely be rich and happy and everyone would love me, and so it was. He was a kind and considerate God. No one ever died. We stayed up all night laughing, went to rest only when we were done. The blood. She had the blood too. Bathtubs filled to enameled lip and her body pouring. As a girl, I thought being a woman meant your life spilling from you like a cup of juice you kept knocking over. I was young enough to think anything that bled was a wound. The moon waited like a round-faced witness in the window each month, steam erasing the mirrors and the walls weeping. All night the tap running and running. I wanted to know how pain made a woman curl like a pill bug poked with a stick. I wanted to know everything about suffering so I could avoid it. I was young enough to think things like that, 7 years small, when calamity was skinned knees and little brothers, and an upturned Sunday crashing to the floor like a chandelier. All I knew of disaster was Hollywood movies, where houses were swallowed easy as bubblegum and spaceships hovered like gnats out of reach, ruin always at a distance. And you could press your face into your mother and everything would be all right once you turned on the lights. Sometimes now, when the ache comes and I'm coiled in dark water, I remember that distant self like a daughter I gave up or lost in a bustling food court and never saw again, the remembering painful. And sometimes I wonder if she knew why her blood came angrier than any other's, blood like my blood, which now seethes and conspires and appears on MRI scans like a black eye or a crop circle or the earth's eager void. This next poem is an ABC Darien, which is a poem where each line begins with the let it off at A, B, C, going down, it's reversed. So it starts with Z. And it's titled Questions the Ghosts Have Asked Me. Zinfandel and moonrise, so why all this crying? You enter and are seen, why be lonely? Please show me exactly the tree that's fang for my body. I want its particular shade, wrens singing in the branches. My death slid on like a dress of crushed velvet, but tell me again about breath, a man's hands under your shirt, I've forgotten. Oh, all this talk about God, but how is your mother? If you could, please summon me, say again my name. I like how it feels rolled off your tongue like bee hum, June breeze. Lingering quiet at the window in morning, fog pearled with fresh light, who do you miss and don't go to? Of all the days you've been given, how many have you spent near the sea and felt small? Do you often experience much gratitude for things that don't vanish? Did you know the stars listen, though they are dead? I kissed the blue lip of horizon and returned for you. What wilder joy than this? Tell me everything you've learned about love, including what will hurt me. Tell me again how the living pray. I have gone to the ends of this earth and all others, but never known a fiercer ache than hunger. Why endure it for any man or God? Do you still fear the dark you were named for? Did you experience shame or comfort in my absence? Have the roses held up? Have you begun the diligent labor of not grieving? Are you also dreaming? Do you still worship me now that I'm here? And the poems I'm going to be reading Saturday at the Fine Arts Work Center are all from my book in progress, and this is one of them. But as a preface, I'm Muslim, and so I was very sick, and I was reading through the Quran while I was sick, trying to, comfort myself. And I came across this passage where Mary's giving birth to Jesus, and she says something that was very strange, and so I wrote a poem based on that. And she says, "Oh, I wish I had died before this and was in oblivion, forgotten." The poem is titled Confession. Truth be told, I like Mary a little better when I imagine her like this, crouched and cursing, a boy god pushing on her cervix. I like remembering she had a cervix, her body ordinary and so like mine. Girl sweat lacing rivulets like veins in the sand, her small hands on her knees, not doves but hands, gripping, a palm pressed to her spine, fronds whispering like voyeurs of her head. Oh Mary, like a god I too take pleasure in knowing you were not all holy, that ache could undo you like a knot. And suffering, I admire this girl who cared for a moment not about God or his plans, but her own distinct life. This fiercer Mary who'd disappear if it saved her, who'd howl to hell with salvation if it meant this pain. The blessed adolescent who squatted indignant in the desert, burying his child like a secret she never wanted to hear. My mother makes a religion to replace the old gods. Scripture gleaned from the backs of magazines, stars. She follows horoscopes like commandments, tells me, Leila, you'll be lucky in love this month, but watch out for the eyes of strangers, whatever that means. A cigarette waved like a censer through the air, calligraphy of smoke. My mother rubs oil for wishes on her wrists in the dark aisles of the Wiccan shop she loves so much. Except for the tarot cards and candles shaped like dicks, she has limits. And won't pass any open water without first sinking in a coin. She insists on fortune cookies, but only believes the ones she likes. My mother stays wary of magic, forbade me late-night Ouija conversations, but once paid $30 for a psychic to summon her sister, then cried. A child, I heard the Trinity wrong, thought God was a ghost, her faith a haunting. But now I know God is just like any man, shifty and often late. God's like a bad dog that doesn't come when he's called, and my mother waits for no one. Summers, her holy months, she lies by the pool and anoints her own good self with her own good sweat. Her wet palms turn tabloids to birds, the pages ruffled, as she tilts her face defiant towards an empty sky. In these moments, I'll believe anything she tells me, still and radiant as a painting of a saint, halos in her sunglasses and the future sleek and spread in her hands. My mother, seer of the week ahead. My mother, the miracle that will save herself. And this is my final poem. In August I undress. Summer turns my skin to brown sugar, sweet, dark, and speckled. Light runs its mouth across my collarbone and drinks the shadow pooled there. Even my hair changes, each strand on my thigh a sliver of soft gold. But there are boundaries, parts distinct and separate as countries marked on a map. There, 2 islands of white sand and one deep, quiet valley, each summit's pale, unsullied peaks bright as salt in the jagged distance above the seaside town. Small wars have been waged for this ungoverned territory, yet no man has ever died on its shores. Has ever the sun set its white eye upon my milk flesh? It hides even from God. I know the way. I show it to you. Thank you.
What a wonderful night. Thank you so much, Leila. Thank you. And Michael, too. All right, our next writer, Tom Macher. He grew up in Georgia, LA, New York, and California. Maybe others? Or that's about it? Okay. Okay, there are others. He attended Riverside City College, San Francisco State University, and the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, where he was a teaching writing fellow. His memoir about living in boys' homes and halfway houses is in his teens is forthcoming from Scribner. Tom Macher, please come up.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for reading. Thanks for having us. This is from a longer thing, but it's the beginning of it, and it's, I guess I'm calling it 2 Bulls right now. When I came back to Los Angeles, I was 21 or 2, which in the group home would have been ancient, an old man over the hill, and guys would have come to me for advice on lady troubles or information about who might be hiring down at the river. But here in the city, I was not even aroused about, not a day player, but only a baby, bereft, unknown. I always appeared sort of rain dampened and wind blown, my t-shirts worn thin, their cotton frayed, jeans torn. Even the soles of my shoes had holes in them. I'm not sure what to say of what was inside myself then. I know I had will. I'd simply gotten in a car and driven from Louisiana to Los Angeles, thinking whatever happened now would be important somehow. For the last few years, I've been treating my depression and anxiety with shrinks and pills, and all that shit had stabilized me to the point I didn't think anymore about killing myself, which up until now was all I'd ever done. But I promised myself after leaving Louisiana that I wouldn't go back to any shrinks again, ever. And once these pills ran out, that was it. Somehow I'd have to stop wanting to kill myself on my own. In the home, guys would have called my self-will a problem, but here in LA, no one was watching me. I'd heard signing up for a mere 3 credits at the local community college allowed you to live in low-rent university housing. And so I brought my ass down there, signed up, got the receipt, and moved into a double dorm room with 4 other men, all of whom had realized the same loophole, and all of whom, like me, dropped their 1 class within the first week. We had a bunk bed, a couple single mattresses scattered on the floor. The 5th man, a swarthy pirate type who believed in dirty vengeance, slept on the couch. He wore a bushy black mane tied up in a loose ponytail, had the usual pirate scruff around his mouth and jaw. If he'd have been 100% right in the head, he would have made for a fine gypsy or seer or palm reader, maybe a donkey handler or city council member, a jailer or warden. He was watchful. A principal or headmaster, a photo or cinematographer. He was patient, studious of others, stubborn. And yet he was hopped up on a number of pharmaceuticals, MAOIs and SSRIs, so many he never slept, and long after going to bed, we'd hear him talking into a rolled up magazine he clenched in his fist. He was always coming and going, always talking about this French couple who drove a tiny car, who used to head north up to PCH for days on end. We never knew where he was at or what he'd find funny. One minute he'd be up on a coffee table, crouched like a surfer, arms spread wide, glassy stare focused on some unknown horizon. And the next he'd be splayed and supine, studying the ceiling. He owned a stabbing knife he'd brandish from time to time when my mouth got the better of me. "Do you see this?" he'd ask. "You do realize I don't sleep at night. You have to understand how familiar this felt. Not safe, but familiar. And in that familiarity, comfortable. He was like every guy I'd known in the home, pharmaceutically corrected, but still crazy. Only now I had to adjust my way of thinking, reconnoiter the way I operated. There was no night tech here, no common bond of recovery, no set of morals or sense of consequence, no brother in the next bunk who might intercede if suddenly this pirate began strangling me in the night. I learned to sleep as light as a new mother, in increments of minutes rather than hours, listening as I dreamed for a rustling of clothing, a knife unsheathed, and then I stopped sleeping altogether, and I'd wander into the Westwood nights, following girls from the boulevard to the library, or back to their sorority houses or into the Rite Aid, where I'd creep behind them, a basket in my hand, picking up tweezers, cotton balls, Q-tips, hydrogen peroxide, and Cadbury eggs. At some point I found myself returning over and over to this one cellar on Landfair. There were no women here, just a bunch of math nerds from a university. Like the rest of us, they'd hunkered down for the rainy months and were spending their evenings wagering on 9-ball, 3-card Monte, and dogs. The pirate started showing up. He'd sit with the other men, egregious as an open sore, watching me through the smoke and darkness from across the room. And then one time his friends, the French couple, appeared. She was quite pretty, I remember, and the guy, I suppose in his own way, was pretty too. At some point she sauntered over and leaned in very close to me, a very alluring look in her French eyes. I'll never forget what she said. "Who are you?" Well, I told her exactly who I was, of course, but then she looked away. "I'm sorry," she said in her little accent. "I thought maybe you were French." Suddenly a violent discussion erupted around the chessboard, and the pirate stood up and pushed the woman's boyfriend out of the way. He was wearing his usual pirate attire, baggy blouse and cargo pants and 20-eyed boots, everything but the patch, parrot, and hat, really. And he called out to me, and when I didn't come, he sort of warbled over and told me in his flat, even tone, "You need to leave." I understood by how his hand was positioned behind his back that he had hold of his stabbing knife, and he was serious. So very slowly I walked out of his cellar and onto Landfair, which is on a steep hill, and down Landfair into the village. I'm not sure where I planned on going. I certainly didn't know then. I just kept walking. After about a mile, I realized I was headed for Santa Monica and the ocean. It was maybe 4 a.m., and once I passed the 405 and got into those long Wilshire blocks, the fog came in from the coast. And somewhere in this walking, it had been more than a few miles, I looked over my shoulder. The pirate was following me. I began walking faster. Here was a corridor of high-rise apartment buildings, condos, banks, car dealerships, with long blocks, with long intersections, some of them a few hundred feet across. And I was making these blocks quickly now, faster and faster, making them as I looked over my shoulder. And yet there he was still on my ass. He wasn't even looking anymore where he was going, just walking face up watching me like a point guard who never looks at the ball, always just watching for some opening. I too stopped looking at where I was going, just had my chin on my shoulder, face turned toward him. He was a block or so back, and I knew by the way he walked, hand behind him, sort of hunched and threatening, that things would not be good for me when he caught up. But he began crossing one of these long intersections, just as a bus was shooting through it, and he got swept up under its wheels. Smoke shot off the tires, the brakes locked up. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I'd seen things, and none of this existed, that I was just lost in another insomnia-induced hallucination. And then I thought, well, what if it did happen? And I kept walking.
so much, Tom Macher. Wow, it's been a wonderful night for everyone. Philip Matthews is next. Whoa, where is he? There he is. He is a queer poet from eastern North Carolina whose practice roots in ritual and performance. Through April, he is a writing fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. Formerly, he was the assistant curator of public projects at the Pulitzer Arts Foundation in St. Louis. Poems have recently appeared in Prodigal,
Asarakis, I think.
Asarakis.
But I'm not sure either, but I think
Okay.
that's
Asarakis, it looks that way. Grimoire,
Grimoire, yeah.
Grimoire, and White Whale Review, in his collaborative project with photographer David Johnson entitled Wig Heavier Than a Boat. Which was recently on view at the Beverly Gallery in St. Louis and online at Lens Scratch. He received his MFA in poetry from Washington University in St. Louis in 2011. Without further ado, Philip Matthews.
So I'm going to read from the Pedal Project, which Wig Heavier Than a Boot is a part of. For about 4 years now, I've worked with a consciousness called Pedal, and at the beginning of the practice, it was really just a way to mix drag performance and poetry performance together, but as the practice has developed, she has begun to take other forms, and I think that's what I mean when I say ritual and performance. It's become more and more of a spiritual practice as well. So I think I'll read about 4 poems from this manuscript, which is the most recent manifestation of that. Sphinx. That the age of Aquarius would herald in without opposition was a lie, decides Pedal. She is chugging her coffee, has work to do, and frantic, her cottonmouth hair, which, of course, does help her to swim across the creek of lies and spiritual holidays. She is making up her mind as she goes, a real magician with info, pulling hamstrings out of stumps and current out of ocean to comb her hair, to powder her eyes with a fully thrust poisson, crushed fish parts sweet, dried on a carpenter's bench in Nice, someone bringing bread to the workers, rustic sunlight, and a door opened on a cut of brie, melting. There is not enough money in the world to convince Pedal to use that bathroom. I move on. That the age of Aquarius would come shining with priests and oracles and wise women, auras pressed like faces to the surface of a bright body of water like heaven, magnified by the arc of history towards justice. That a telepathic warrior cry would needle through the crowns of their heads, floating 1 to 2 inches above their heads when pressed to water like sunlight, would barely break through and meld on the surface like wavering coins before lifting, lighting the gull's breast, lighting the shark's fin mistaken for a cue, lighting the baby's hand reaching out past its carriage threshold. We have been carried carefully long enough. No eggs in the palms now. What are the men doing now? Rain hits the surface's loosed belt. I should say too, the poems here have gotten extra weird. And a part of it, and I've been letting it happen, and I really don't even know yet how I feel about these, but I've been letting it happen because having worked with David and a photographer before him, Carly and Faye, for 3 years, I felt that the poems were becoming, and logically so engaged with the photographic process that they were becoming trapped. You know what I mean? It was sort of like I was trying to create portraiture as well as being the subject of portraiture, and so in Provincetown the poems have the lens isn't photographic as much as it is cinematic, which is very exciting to me. So I'm interested in the ways that the poems veer almost out of my control, and then they allow me or they don't allow me to sort of wheel them back. A catch. This week I have carried my friend like a personal son at my shoulder, right. Sometimes she purrs, sometimes she lashes out. Pedal, forgive me. I have come to you wretched and stunted. The wooden band around my small finger, hexagonal, irregular, binds me to you. I will not take it off. We erode each other, give back each other, dynamic as a circle's time. I place my feet at the shoreline, your feet are cold. Our hands loosen or shrink, blood pulling us towards homeostasis. The whole skin, interconnected, responds. Pedal, like gauze and shift in an airflow, we get there to where we are going, but enough of this small glass, help me with your branches to break it. Our skin and diamond fragments on shore, partly buried as the sand gives way around it, partly fractured with sunlight. A few warm patches at our freezing hands, all 6, 2, and 4. Which ones shall we hold to cross this bay? North, towards earth. South, towards fire. West, towards water. East, towards air. Above to God, below to goddess. We form the circle, watch a gull. We form the circle, watch a gull crash, clam on the rock, eat the circle that will fuel its body. Another flies closely by with speed, yellow clam in its beak, feeling what? Not the ocean swiftly above it, and leverages the speed to drop it, crack it, lift its body in tendrils with its black spotted beak. Quickly, the brain forgets the ringing in the ear, heralding, waking, or peril. Pedal, the tumor. Pedal, the molecular crabs working earthbound to follow fallow. Pedal, the breast in this shell, the first/enemy/watch it. This is a longer poem. It's called Brain About to Build a Boat. What Petal wants most, she thinks, is a bowl of water to rest in, ash limb around which the family performs tasks in the glass. A ritual wherein 7 birds are smoked from the chimney. Those who can fly will fly, and those who can fall will be disposed of. Meanwhile, the cat climbs Petal's spine, peering out from the strands of green lights, red lights, white lights, pawing at the angel's waxed wing. A daughter is singing to the radio nearby. A daughter is taxing her sister for time spent gazing out the window and whining, the listening in for a culprit and pining/Petal shining, an orbit in the corner daylight presses and veils night after night like a bedsheet. Petal still believes the stories daylight tells, though Petal is just a tree, unconvinced she is dead. The daughter is minding the weather, silent airbends flowing backwards on the screen. This episode is set in a submarine, tidewater blackness, though blue-lit from inside, though black and white film. A broad corridor-like room with white matte cases within, almost coffin-like, but more like a laboratory. Perhaps 5 are open, and a nurse/guard moves between them, touching the nude bodies, angels within. They represent masculinity in various forms. Femme spectrum, fit and fat, extremely thin, hairy and not, makeup and not. There is a single black chair set into the wall for the nurse/guard to sit between rounds. She touches the silent bodies more or less according to the poem. Touching the forehead, touching the wing joints, touching the mouth, touching the chest, touching the throat, touching the pelvis, touching the knees. The bodies are not all white. Do not assume that. The bodies are not all men. Do not assume that. Perhaps it is more like 50 pods open. At the voice of the poem, the camera moves fluidly between narrative and close-up fragmented shots. Nipples as if in a bed. Nipples as slowly burning hydrangeas. The camera sucks out to blackness, a sound beyond the last lines of the poem. Touching the breath, touching the spit on the earth, in which the heart will rot, rest, wretched, or spill, in which the camera cuts back in. The custodian in an office within a hallway, played by James Franco, hears a simple noise, something falling to the floor perhaps further off. He does not go to investigate, but pokes his head from the office door to listen. His consciousness travels, spectre-like, down the hallway around 2 to 3 corners to the source of the noise in the pod rim, so that we do not know if the next scene is happening or Franco's imagination. the guard/nurse/pedal kneeling at one of the larger bodies, its soft, sleeping fist in her mouth. It is almost necrophiliac. We see her ring tan on the large stomach, the camera just above the body's chest, looking down, the glint of the bite before she wipes her mouth with her upper arm, slightly panting before her eyes cut directly to the camera. Beat of silence, immediate black. There is a soft drone throughout, like soothing tinnitus, where the Holy Ghost is felt mainly as the pheromonic voltage between palm and resting skin, a communicative, erotic charge with potential to transform the parties it touches, contacts, selectively, even when invoked, selectively makes contact with those it feels deserving and ready. The Holy Ghost remaining in a body, allowing that body to conduct it unto others. This is what/whom we call a healer, which can take many forms of body work or energy work, including sex work, including performative sex work, brain about to build a bed. I'll read one more. And this is all based off of notes that I took during the various photo shoots with Dave, in which I was, manifesting as pedal mostly in rural landscapes, and I had my notebook with me, and I would take notes during it. And it's called The Flux State of Being Obscured. Lately, pedal's just a scrim I lay over my naked body, which, of course, is the most honest manifestation. Invites the possibility of consciousness in. Invites the possibility of divinity in, sanctuary in a glass bowl of rainwater. The mirror. Narcissus engaging the photographic process wherein information is layered onto a frame held long enough. Can I bear it? In front of the fire, with my leggings on, standing too hot. Lately I can hear her ringing, then know where to sit, and know what to write, and know what to do what she says. Even if it means we will have to start over with this pregnancy magnet. Pedal and I drift into, erode, and give to each other like two landscapes on either side of one water. Sometimes the light is harnessed, sometimes is wielded, betrayed, cutting her through. The impulses that led her to the first place, governing more and more of that land. The impulses she created in the first place. The storage of her memory in addition to mine. We are wearing more and more of each other, needing less and less of the scrims. I lengthen the durations I spend in her face, move closer to her mind like a fire, and I bear it. In a daily context with others, in a spiritual context without them, I see her looking through the smoke and the flames. Though pedal is not a theory, not a political narrative or handsaw, is a way to accept my body, not yours. I am not marketing pedal to you. You need not find me erotic or satisfying. Thank you.
Philip Matthews. Wow, that was a ride. That was amazing. Well, I want to bring up Tom, Philip, Leila, and Michael. I want you to come up. I'm going to move this. And this is for any or do you want to stay where you are and they'll just ask questions?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. Do you have any questions? And I can just give the mic to whomever. Anyone? How did the name pedal come about?
I was interested in finding out that pedal is a French derogatory term for gay men because it's pedophile. But I was also interested in sort of reclaiming that. I was interested in the ways that petal or flowers is a stereotypical symbol in poetry for femininity. And then also in yoga, the chakras are described as being petaled, and the higher the chakra, the more petals that they have. And so just sort of bridging all of those things together.
Any other questions for Philip?
Can I say something to Philip?
Yeah.
Just to thank you that you talk about your process. I love that. It just adds another dimension and a feeling of connection to your work. So thank you very much.
That's a ride. It was an amazing ride. Anything else? We can move around. Leila? Anyway, do you have anything to say? I mean, everyone was so wonderful, and everyone had a different voice, as the open mic people also. Tom and Michael. Sorry. Michael was Philadelphia, and it was the green shag, right? Living in Philadelphia at some point. I appreciate it.
I'll ask a question.
Yes, Mary Ann.
Maybe you could each say how the fellowship has helped you or hurt you or one or the other. How it's been, I guess.
Good question.
Sorry.
So I was living out of a suitcase for the year before I came here. I had a long cancer scare, like a 2.5-year cancer scare and surgery, and while I was doing my MFA. And so after I had my surgery and I was in bed rest for a month, and then I graduated and I took off like immediately to sort of process what had happened to me. And so I was moving around, and I was never in one place for longer really than a month. So it was very exciting for me to be in one place for a while. And that first month was very productive, October, and then the election happened. And my family's Muslim, and we're Arab, and so my mother called me like a couple days after. Well, she called me that day too, but she called me a couple days after, panicked and wanting me to come home and wanting us to go, to like leave the United States. And I remember telling her over and over and over that I was like probably the safest part of the United States I could be. And it's true. And I recently have been able to kind of get back to work on my book, because in the wake of the election, I've just been reading primarily, and very political things. And I've been reading only Arab women for a long time since then. But I felt very safe here. So as far as like, I think that it was productive, but it'll be interesting to see how that shows up later. I'm sure it's going to come back into my work at some point. But I'm very grateful for Provincetown. Thank you. It's very homey.
Michael?
I would say, because the work center has fiction writers and poets and visual artists, and it's been the first time that I've really been in a community of all artists and of people in so many disciplines, and it's been really helpful to just hang out with the poets and the visual artists, who I think it's a very different process and perspective on the work than fiction writers have, because fiction's it's pretty straightforward. It's not as abstract as some of the other forms. So just finding new ways to kind of look at my own work and look at my life as an artist and as a creator. That's been the community aspect of it has been really tremendous, because it's not something I've ever encountered before.
Tom, do you have any words of wisdom?
Yeah.
About?
I think I have lots of words.
I think maybe, can everyone hear Tom?
Can y'all hear me all right?
Yeah, okay.
As far as that goes, this is my second time at the fellowship at the work center. I did a fellowship there about 5 years ago, and at the time I think I was coming out of grad school, and I had a lot of different voices in my head, as far as teachers or classmates, a lot of rejection slips piling up, and a lot of them had different things to say about my work, and they were inside my head when I was writing. And when I was here that time, I just wanted to push everything out of my head. So it was just a quiet, and for me, it was sort of different than what Michael was talking about. I didn't want to talk about work at all. I just wanted to just wind me up and let me go in front of the computer at my desk. I friggin' put soundboard over the windows and took, long walks at night. But, and it was really good to sort of just have that space away from everything to sort of fall in love with my work again and remember why I started writing in the first place. Sentences I like, just writing for myself. And that was the big gift this time. It's like, this time I brought along a friend, and I'm not quite as secluded because it's good.
Thank you, Tom. And Philip, do you have anything? I mean, that was a great question.
I think the biggest thing is just having time. I was working in a directorial post, and so it was a dream job in a way because I got to do projects in St. Louis with artists and writers and performers from all different kinds of backgrounds and disciplines. But the bulk of my creative energy was going towards other people, and so whenever I had a chance where I could write a poem or do the collaboration with Carly or Dave, there was a way in which, because time was limited, I really did not allow myself to write a different kind of poem because I felt, there's really no time for failure. And so having such large stretches here to really suspend disbelief about whether the poem is working or not has been such a gift.
I hope that tonight, that reading your work, as when I read my work, I hear it differently, or I hear it, I think, okay, this is finished, or this needs more work. And I hope that your experience here has been a good one. It's the first time, I think I've said this before, that we've paired up with the Fine Arts Work Center, and it's been such a great evening. Thank you so much. Well, I want to say that on your program, which doesn't have the back here, does anyone have a program with the back? I'll give it right back to you. April, we have first of all, I want to, Mary Ann Bragg is a journalist. She's with the Cape Cod Times, and I know she doesn't want me to do this. She recently received an honor, and we want to appreciate you, Mary Ann Bragg. As our journalist, is your beat Provincetown?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore. Well, and also Mary Ann was one of the first journalists, when she was writing for the Banner, to come and do a story, wonderful story about the Writer's Voice Café. Thank you so much. You had faith enough way back then, and it's nice to see you again. In April, we're having a Speak Out, We Will Not Be Silenced. It's Sexual Abuse Month. And we're also going to have the t-shirt, the clothesline t-shirt, outside, and we're going to have a workshop on making a t-shirt about any kind of sexual abuse you've had. You can write on your t-shirt, you can draw on your t-shirt, and that's going to be, it's not on here, it's the Friday, I think probably the first Friday, but look, it'll be on the library. Also in May, performing Shakespeare with Stuart Derrick. He's going to be working with actors, and anything else to add? Performing Shakespeare.
Yes, classes. I'm doing a workshop in Shakespeare, and it starts tomorrow night at 6 o'clock here at the library. It's come whenever you want. It's free of charge, and it's open to professionals, non-professionals, to poets, to writers, to anyone who wants to improve their public voice in front of an audience. And if you haven't had a lot of experience with blank verse, you will by the end of the 2 months.
I picked a sonnet last year, and he worked with me as he worked with others. I learned so much about reading a sonnet to people. So, and then June, there is our Neil Silverblatt. He's going to be our featured writer in June. And Julie is going to be our featured writer in the future. So thank you and I always tell people, a lot of times I major in audience, and you can learn a lot. Thank you so much to our audience for coming and being a part of this wonderful cafe. Kitty back there has the funny looking hat. If you could put anything in it, that would be great. We do have expenses. And Phoebe Otis, thank you for being our open mic. And also the, let's see, yes, the Provincetown Public Library. You know, Matt Clark is the director, and we've been here 3+ years, and he's been wonderful. The board and the staff at the library, as well as PTV staff, Amy and all the women there. And this program is sponsored by their friends and supported of the Provincetown Public Library. So we'll see you on April 12th. Hopefully you'll be back for the Speak Out. We will not be silent. There's Matt right there. Matt.